Good Tuesday morning. We're glad you're with us on the 50,000-watt front porch, where we've invited all the candidates for the newly drawn District 9 congressional seat here in Central Florida, which includes Osceola, parts of Orange, and Polk counties, to join us here this week. Yesterday we had Todd Long. Tomorrow we have Julius Melendez, and on Thursday John Quinones. No answer yet from Alan Grayson or the independents Nieves and Sanchez, but the invitations are out. Joining me now, though, is District 9 Republican candidate and businessman Mark Oxner. Welcome to Bud Hedinger Live. Good morning, Mark.
Thank you, Mr. Hedinger.
Let me ask you, what prompted you to run for office, which I think is something you've not done before. Am I correct?
That is correct. Yeah, I looked at the economic crisis our country was in, and then I looked at my resume, and I said, we send career politicians, we send attorneys to Washington over and over again. They're not doing the job. We need somebody that understands the economy and somebody that understands what the federal government is doing to our economy, and that's why I decided to run.
I have no problem with that, and fresh blood is always welcome, and I think many would agree with me, desperately needed. Now, when I go to your website, Mark, talks about you being a businessman in the financial, manufacturing, transportation realm. Can you flesh that out a little bit? What kind of business are you in?
Well, one of my biggest accomplishments was I turned around a large U.S. manufacturer. Actually, it was the third largest plumbing manufacturer in the U.S. that was almost put into bankruptcy because of government regulations. The company was Briggs Plumbing. I turned that company around in 13 months and added jobs in the process. I was vice president of a bank at the time when bank auditors were coming in and making us give more subprime loans because they said we weren't giving enough loans to people who didn't deserve it. I started 3 small businesses. My first small business I started when I was 23 years old with $1,000. One of my small businesses became the largest software provider for the rent-to-own industry. And today I'm an executive in the 13th largest company in the world, which is Deutsche Post WorldNet. And I travel the world working with manufacturing companies, helping them sometimes outsource their jobs out of the U.S. So I have the type of economic experience we don't send to Washington, local, manufacturing, financial, and global economy, and I know what our federal government is doing to companies because I have the battle scars to prove it.
And what is the federal government doing to people in business like you? I mean, we this huge firestorm over the president's comment, if you have a business, you didn't build that, must just outrage you.
It does outrage me. Business, gives people jobs, and we're in a age, if you would believe the president, we're in a recovery, which I don't believe we're in a recovery, but we're in a jobless, as they would call it, a jobless recovery, which is not a recovery at all.
That's really true here in Florida, where a lot of experts, forecasters have suggested that we're still going to be above 8% unemployment here a year or two from now. That's not what Governor Scott promised us. What would you do to jumpstart job creation, not only nationally, but here in Florida?
Well, one of the things that we have to do, we have to start at the national level. We've got to get the U.S. government out of the way. When I was with different companies, we were hampered by regulations. So we need to make credit easier to get. We need to start repealing all these regulations and laws that we have. We have to repeal Sarbanes-Oxley. We need to repeal Dodd-Frank.
You've even called for defunding the EPA because of the web of crippling regulations.
Yes, we need the EPA serves a good purpose. It gives us clean air and water, but they've overstepped their lines, and they seem to do everything they can to hamper economic growth, and our president encourages that.
Talking with Mark Oxner, who is a businessman out of Champions Gate, running for Congress in District 9. When I go to your website and I watch your videos, Mark, you talk a lot about we've got to stop the spending. But I want you here this morning to get specific on what needs to be cut at the federal level. There's going to be pain inflicted. People don't want to talk about specifics, except we just stop the spending. You've got to flesh this out for our listeners.
Okay. We have 2 types of spending that we need to stop. We have low-hanging fruit, and we have the hard stuff. One of the problems that we have in Congress right now, they won't even touch the low-hanging fruit. Cutting the EPA would be an easy thing to do. Doing away with the Department of education.
Let's get to the high-hanging fruit and the hard stuff nobody wants to deal with, the entitlements. What do you do with Medicaid, Medicare, and unsustainable levels of entitlements?
That's the hard stuff. Medicare is the biggest problem that we have now. It's what's going to bankrupt our country if we don't attack it right now. Now, the problem with Medicare is that we've been having for at least the last 20 years socialized medicine. You know, when Obamacare isn't the beginning of socialized medicine, it's just making it more socialized. So what we need to do is we need to take the socialization out of our healthcare system and go to a free market system. One of the things that we need to do with Medicare is we have to give the Medicare recipients an incentive to control their Medicare costs. So I would propose giving a cash bonus to Medicare people who control their Medicare costs. That's just one part of the equation. The other part of the equation of the health care is we have an insurance system that is basically a socialized system that we all are into that is secured by the federal government. We need to change our insurance system to a totally free market system. We need to get rid of allow cross-state competition. We need to not make it very easy that you're not tied into your insurance based upon where you work.
All right.
You need to do tort reform. So I have a whole list. I put a document, article out on Breitbart.com that specifies that. So somebody has more time, they can look and see what my plan is to control the health care cost.
You've got some interesting ideas there. Let me ask you, because time is getting tight. Mark Oxner, you're running for District 9 as a Republican for Congress. You have this truth in taxation concept that you would like to see implemented. Explain to people what that is. I don't think I've ever seen this before.
Well, basically, we need tax reform. And we're not going to get tax reform because there's too much power in the tax code. The only way we're going to get tax reform, like a flat tax or the fair tax, which the fair tax is what I'm in favor of, is we have to get the American people mad enough to put congressional representatives and senators in that will push for tax reform. So my truth in taxation plan basically shows is an idea that when you get a receipt, you will see how much hidden tax is in that receipt. So like when you buy a loaf of bread for $1, you would see that 22% of that is hidden federal income tax.
Your website suggests that products would have the source of taxation actually printed on the package. Is that what you really propose to do?
No, that's not what we really propose to do. That's a visual so people can see what...
all right. Well, you blew that one by the bud man here. I thought we were going to have packaging, with calories and carbohydrates, and then, this much in taxes and as part of the price. Okay. That is not exactly what you're talking about. All right.
If companies would want to do that, that's what we would be for. But basically, we want to change the receipt. So when you get the receipt, right now it shows you how much sales tax you're paying. That it would also show how much federal income tax.
Now I understand. Thanks for that. Mark Oxner, I want people to go to your website, learn a little bit more about you. You're not a fellow that we're particularly familiar with, but you have across-the-board very conservative stands on the issue. And as I say, it's nice to have some fresh blood out there. How do folks connect with your campaign? What's the website?
Our website is markoxnerforcongress.com.
markoxnerforcongress.com. You've been really attacking Alan Grayson, but you have to get out of the Florida primary against your Republican opponents in order to have a shot at Alan Grayson. How do you see your chances?
I think our chances are very good. Our campaign has really hit the stride in the last couple of weeks. We're getting out there to voters and meeting voters on one-on-one. A lot of positive response, and it looks like we have a good chance of winning this race.
Mark Oxner will know a week from now, so thanks for joining us on Bud Hedinger Live.
Thank you very much, Bud.
All right, we've got a couple of more Republican candidates who've answered affirmatively. They'd like to be on the show for District 9. Julius Melendez tomorrow, John Quinones on Thursday. Invitations still out and unanswered to Alan Grayson and the independents, Mike Nieves and Roberto Sanchez. More on BHL. If you want to react to the Oxner interview, you want a businessman untried in politics? Is that what we need? In Washington. Oxner, your reaction to the interview and to the District 9 race. If it's not Oxner for you, who